Hello, this is April 6th, 2021. As the World Burns, I'm your host, Randall Burns. Today we're going to discuss some LGBTQ related predictions on Metaculus and Predict It. First, there's a claim on Metaculus on whether an openly gay person will be elected president in the United States before 2041. It is presently trading at 20%. Now, related to that is a real money prediction market claim on Predict It, which gives Pete Buttigieg a 6% chance of getting the Democratic nomination in 2024. So that 20% chance may not be that far off. I mean, Buttigieg is a rising star. If he doesn't, and he's relatively young, so it's going to go beyond 2024. I mean, he's probably the leading candidate leading gay person who could potentially become president at some point, and he's obviously very openly gay. Now, there's also a Metaculus question on whether there will be an openly LGBT Pope before 2050, which is presently estimated at 9%. Now, Metaculus predictions more than 5 years out are not necessarily, we don't have a good calibration yet for their accuracy. We know that the accuracy of predictions tends to fall a bit after 4 or 5 years. And so that's just a really rough estimate, but that is the prediction. Now, the one that I find to be more immediate and more interesting is there's a question on the Church of the Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormons, on whether they will allow same-sex marriage by 2030. It is currently estimated at 22%. Now, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the LDS as those of us who live on the West Coast of the United States, the LDS has been one of the most openly conservative and LGBTQ suspicious denominations in existence. They are also a much better educated denomination than fundamentalist Christians. And in the West Coast have a very, very important business role. A lot of very prominent families on the West Coast have roots in the LDS. A notable example was Walt Disney, the founder of the Disney Studios, was affiliated with that denomination. And so they play a pretty important business role, particularly in real estate investing here on the West Coast. And they've always been very persnickety about deviations from sexual behavior. Part of that has to do with their open embrace of polygamy prior to Utah becoming a state. And they were more or less forced to abandon that as a condition of getting statehood for Utah. But it's a persistent part of their heritage. And as you meet Mormons, many, like for example, an old friend of mine is the descendant of 3 of the original 12 founders of the Mormon Church. And he showed me like some of his family pictures and albums, and it showed like his patriarchal polygamous I forget how many greats-grandparents and his 7 wives. And he had like 63 children. And this is, part of his heritage. This is part of his family. Even when polygamy was banned, those children didn't go away. And they're still family members. And this is something that is in the family history of a lot of LDS people today. And the LDS is both a cultural group and a religious group on the West Coast. I mean, there's a lot of people for whom this is a very important part of their family history in this area. And they've extended beyond the descendants of the original founders quite a bit. But there's a lot of people here for whom the blur is difficult. Now, I put the estimate at higher than that because I know from anecdotal evidence that it's gut-wrenching for people that grow up in the LDS that come out as gay to leave. It's just an absolutely gut-wrenching experience for many of them. And they're more or less forced out. And you also have people that may not be straight who feel compelled to enter into marriages with a woman. And sometimes there's a lot of heartbreak associated with that. And so this is all very complicated. Now, the other thing about the LDS is they are a very pro-natalist organization. They do tend to encourage larger families. Now, in the film Harvey Milk, there's a kind of a comedic statement where the Dan White character says to Harvey, well, can two men have a child together? And Harvey says, well, God knows we keep on trying. Okay, well, there's two meticulous claims suggesting that that may actually become something closer to reality in the not so distant future. One is the question of when will the first baby derived from stem cell derived gametes be born? They put that estimate as 2034. That's 13 years away. And the basic idea here is to join the genetic material of two parents who may not necessarily who may even be of the same gender together. I think that's going to be one of the first places where will be a demand. There'll also be people, for example, if for one reason or another cannot create viable ova or sperm that wish to have children together that may be of different genders, and that's also an area where this will be developed for. But the current estimate is 2034. Time will see how that happens. The other question is, when will the first successful, entirely artificial, extracorporeal human pregnancy conclude? And they're putting that at 2044. That will bypass the need for having a woman to act as a surrogate for a male couple. There's quite, with lesbians, this is less of an issue. They can easily get sperm donations, and many of them do. But the first question would allow two women to have children that are the genetic offspring of both of them. The next one will be mainly relevant for gay male couples. And really, it's only going to become relevant if it catches on enough that it lowers in price. Right now, surrogates are not necessarily horribly expensive. I've seen quotes for surrogates from poorer countries for U.S. couples at around 25 to 30,000. So it's not a trivial expense, but it's also not, it's something that middle-class gay couples can conceivably afford. I've known gay couples in the Bay Area that were doing this where one of them was the biological parent of the child. Now, all of this is going to further fan the culture wars in the United States. I will try to cover that issue in a separate topic. But this is what the markets are saying. This is what we have to expect. And I know that I was a little bit surprised with the LDS claim until I sat back and thought about it a little bit. Again, this is Randall Burns, As the World Burns. Thank you for joining me. Please do like this video if you found it useful and interesting. And feel free to make comments. I especially want input on future episodes you would like. I want this to be a listener-driven channel. And I do want to bring you the best content I can and the content that you want. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you being here.